My name is David Chen. I'm 28 years old. I work night security at the Riverside Natural History Museum in Portland, Oregon. It's a small museum. 3 floors. 62 exhibits. Built in 1923. Dinosaur fossils on the first floor. Taxidermy animals on the second. Cultural artifacts and gemstones on the third. I've been working the night shift here for 2 years. 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week. Completely alone in the building. Just me, the exhibits, and the silence. The job is simple. Walk the building every hour. Check all the doors and windows. Monitor the security cameras. Make sure nothing is disturbed. Document any issues in the logbook. For the first 18 months, nothing was ever disturbed. The museum at night is peaceful, quiet. The exhibits stay exactly where they're supposed to be. But 3 months ago, something changed. I started noticing small things. A taxidermy bird facing a different direction than it had been. A display case moved 2 inches to the left. A dinosaur skeleton's head tilted at a slightly different angle. At first, I thought I was misremembering. Tricks of memory. Fatigue from night shifts. The human brain seeing patterns that aren't there. But then I started taking photos. Every night. Every exhibit. Documenting exact positions. And when I compared the photos the next night, I could see it clearly. The exhibits were moving. Not when I was looking at them. Only when I walked away. Only when I wasn't watching. And they were moving closer to the exits. Like they were trying to leave. The Riverside Natural History Museum is not a famous museum. It's not the Smithsonian or the Met. It's a small regional museum that most tourists never visit. School field trips. Local families. History enthusiasts. The building is old. Built in 1923 by a railroad baron named Thomas Riverside, who collected natural specimens during his travels. When he died in 1947, he donated his collection and the building to the city. The museum has been operating ever since. Same exhibits, mostly. Some new additions over the years, but the core collection is original. Riverside's personal acquisitions from around the world. The building is 3 stories. Victorian architecture. High ceilings. Marble floors. Grand staircase connecting all 3 levels. Large windows that let in daylight during operating hours but become dark mirrors at night. First floor, paleontology. Dinosaur fossils. Ancient marine life. Mineral formations. Second floor, taxidermy. Mounted animals from 6 continents. Everything from small birds to a full-sized grizzly bear. Third floor, cultural artifacts. Indigenous American pottery. Egyptian scarabs. Viking tools. Colonial-era furniture. A small collection of gemstones in locked cases. During the day, the museum employs 12 people. Director, curators, educators, maintenance, front desk staff. But at night, it's just one security guard. Me. I applied for this job 2 years ago when I moved to Portland. I'd been working retail and hated it. Hated dealing with customers. Hated the chaos. Night security seemed perfect. Quiet. Solitary. No one to deal with except myself. I could read, study, work on my laptop between rounds. The interview was brief. The museum director, Dr. Elizabeth Harmon, asked standard questions. Had I worked security before? Was I comfortable being alone? Could I handle medical emergencies? She also asked one question that seemed odd at the time. Do you have a good memory for detail? She asked. Can you remember how things are supposed to look? I said yes. I have a decent visual memory. I notice when things are out of place. She seemed satisfied with that answer. I was hired the next day. My first night was September 15th, 2022. The training was simple. The previous night guard, a man named Robert Chen, no relation, showed me the basics. Walk every floor once per hour, he said. Check all doors and windows. Document everything in the logbook. If you see anything unusual, call me or Dr. Harmon. What counts as unusual? I asked. Robert hesitated. Broken glass, open windows, unauthorized people, that kind of thing. Has that ever happened? No. This museum is pretty quiet at night. Most nights, nothing happens at all. He showed me the security camera system. 12 cameras covering entrances, stairwells, and main exhibit halls. The feeds displayed on monitors in the security office on the first floor. You'll spend most of your time here, Robert said, gesturing to the small office. The cameras cover most of the building, but you still need to do physical rounds every hour. Insurance requirement. Why are you leaving? I asked. It seemed like an easy job. Good pay for basically sitting alone in a building. Robert's expression changed. Something I couldn't read. Personal reasons. I'm moving to Seattle. He didn't elaborate. I didn't push. He left after that first night. I was on my own from then on. For 18 months, the job was exactly what Robert described. Quiet, uneventful. I do my hourly rounds, check the logbook, watch the cameras, and fill the time between with reading or online courses. The museum at night is peaceful. The marble floors echo with every footstep. The exhibits are still and silent. The only sounds are the building settling, the HVAC system, and my own breathing. I grew comfortable with the space, familiar with every exhibit. I knew which floorboards creaked, which display cases had scratches on the glass, which taxidermy animals had missing eyes or patched fur. The building became predictable, safe, routine, until March 2024. The first incident was so small I almost didn't notice it. March 3rd, 2024, Sunday night. I was doing my 2 a.m. round on the second floor, walking through the North American Mammals exhibit. There's a section with smaller animals. Foxes, raccoons, badgers, all mounted in lifelike poses on artificial terrain. One of the exhibits is a red fox. Beautiful specimen, mounted in a pouncing position, focused on something to its left. The placard says it was acquired in 1931 from British Columbia. I've walked past this fox hundreds of times. I know exactly what it looks like. The angle of its head, the position of its paws, the direction it's facing. But on March 3rd, at 2 a.m., something was different. The fox was facing right instead of left. I stopped, stared at it, tried to remember if I was wrong about its usual position. But I wasn't wrong. I'd walked past this fox 2 hours earlier, at midnight. It was facing left. Now it was facing right. I checked the display case. Locked. No signs of tampering. The fox was still mounted to its base. Nothing else in the exhibit had changed. I pulled out my phone and took a photo. Then I continued my rounds. At 3 a.m., I walked past the fox again. It was facing left again, back to its original position. I stopped, felt my heartbeat quicken, checked my phone. The photo from 2 a.m. clearly showed the fox facing right, but now it was facing left. I stared at it for a full minute. The fox stared back with its glass eyes. Frozen, inanimate, exactly as a taxidermy animal should be. I documented the incident in the logbook. Red fox exhibit, second floor. Appeared to change position between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. rounds. Recommend checking mounting for stability. I thought maybe the mounting had loosened. Maybe vibrations from the building settling had caused it to rotate slightly. But the fox was secured to its base. The base was secured to the display platform. There was no mechanical way it should have moved. Still, I convinced myself there was a rational explanation. Loose mounting. My own misperception. Fatigue. I didn't think about it again until the next night. March 4th, Monday night. I arrived for my shift at 10 p.m. Before starting my first round, I went directly to the Red Fox. It was facing left, same as it should be. I took a photo, noted the time, 10:15 p.m. At 11 p.m., I did my first official round. Checked all 3 floors. Everything normal. The Red Fox was still facing left. At midnight, second round. The fox was facing right. I took another photo. Checked the display case. Still locked. No tampering. At 1 a.m., third round. The fox was facing left again. This was not a mounting issue. This was not my imagination. Something was moving this fox. Rotating it. When I wasn't looking, I decided to watch it. Really watch it. See if I could catch it moving. I stood in front of the fox exhibit for 15 minutes. Staring. Not blinking. Watching for any movement. Nothing. The fox remained perfectly still. Glass eyes staring back at me. Lifeless. I turned away to check another exhibit. When I turned back, 30 seconds later, the fox was facing right. It had moved in the 30 seconds I wasn't looking directly at it. I should have reported this. Called Dr. Harmon. Told her something impossible was happening in her museum. But what would I say? A taxidermy fox is moving when I'm not looking at it. I'd sound insane. I'd be fired or sent for a psych evaluation. So I didn't report it. Instead, I started documenting everything. I took photos of every exhibit at the start of each shift. Then I'd photograph them again during each hourly round, comparing positions, looking for changes. And I found them. Lots of them. The exhibits were moving. Not all of them. Not every night. But consistently enough that it couldn't be coincidence. Second floor, taxidermy section. The red fox rotated between left and right facing. A barn owl's head tilted at different angles. A raccoon's paw position changed. A coyote appeared to have shifted 2 inches forward. First floor, paleontology. A velociraptor skeleton's head tilted downward when it should be level. Fossilized trilobites rearranged themselves within their display case. A replica dinosaur egg rolled from one side of its platform to the other. Third floor, artifacts. Pottery pieces rotated within locked display cases. A Viking axe shifted position on its mount. Gemstones seemed to change their arrangement. Small movements. Subtle changes. Easy to dismiss individually, but collectively, undeniable. The exhibits were moving, and they were all moving in the same direction. Toward the exits, toward the doors, toward the stairs, like they wanted to leave. I started testing them, experimenting, trying to understand the pattern. I discovered several rules. Rule 1. They only move when I'm not looking directly at them. If I stare at an exhibit continuously, it remains frozen, perfectly still. But the moment I look away, even for a second, it can move. Rule 2. They move during my rounds, not when I'm in the security office. When I'm sitting in the office watching the camera feeds, nothing moves. The exhibits remain static on the monitors. But when I'm physically walking the building, that's when movement occurs. Rule 3. The movements are progressive. Each night, the exhibits move a little closer to exits. A few inches here, a slight rotation there. Over time, they're migrating. Slowly, deliberately. Rule 4. They return to their original positions by morning. By the time I finish my shift at 6 a.m., everything is back where it's supposed to be. Every exhibit in its correct position, like nothing ever happened. Rule 5. Some exhibits move more than others. The red fox moves every night. The grizzly bear on the second floor has never moved. Smaller items move more frequently than large ones. I documented all of this in a private notebook. Photos, times, distances, patterns. I was treating it like a scientific study, because that's the only way I could process what was happening. If I let myself really think about the implications, that inanimate objects were moving on their own, I'd lose my mind. Better to document, observe, analyze, pretend there was a logical explanation I just hadn't found yet. After 2 weeks of documentation, I decided to check the museum's history, see if anything like this had happened before. I searched old news archives, museum records, articles about the Riverside Natural History Museum. Most of what I found was mundane. Grand opening in 1923. Various exhibit additions over the decades. Educational programs. Community events. But I found 3 odd things. First, the museum has had 19 night security guards since it opened in 1923. That's a lot of turnover for a position that should be stable. Average tenure, 1.8 years. I calculated that. Most security guards quit after less than 2 years. Some lasted only months. Second, in 1967, a night guard named Gerald Thompson filed a police report claiming he was attacked by a stuffed bear during his shift. The police found no evidence of an attack. Thompson was fired. He died 6 months later from a heart attack. He was 34 years old. Third, in 1989, the museum was closed for 3 weeks for structural assessment and repairs. No specific details about what was repaired. No building permits filed. Just 3 weeks of closure right after a night guard named Sandra Price quit unexpectedly. I tried to find contact information for previous security guards. Reached out through social media, phone directories, LinkedIn. I found 5 of them. 3 wouldn't talk to me at all. Hung up as soon as I mentioned the museum. 1, a woman named Patricia Liu who worked there in 2019, said only, "Don't stay there longer than you have to. And don't trust the exhibits." Then she hung up. The 5th person was Robert Chen, my predecessor, the guard who trained me. I called him in Seattle. He answered on the 3rd ring. "Robert, it's David Chen. You trained me at the Riverside Museum. I need to ask you about something." Silence on the other end. Then, "You've noticed, haven't you? The movements." My heart hammered. "Yes, you knew." Of course I knew. Every guard knows. That's why we all quit. Why didn't you warn me? Would you have believed me? Would you have taken the job if I told you the exhibits move when you're not looking? He was right. I wouldn't have believed him. "What are they?" I asked. "Why do they move?" "I don't know what they are. Ghosts. Curses. Some kind of energy in the building. I don't know and I don't care. I just know they move. And they're getting more active. More active. When I started there 3 years ago, it was small things. Occasional movements. Easy to ignore. But by the time I left, they were moving every night. Getting bolder. And he trailed off. And what? They were following me. During my rounds, I could hear footsteps behind me. See things moving in my peripheral vision. One night, I turned around and the grizzly bear was 10 feet closer to me than it should have been. That's when I quit. My blood ran cold. The grizzly bear? That's never moved for me. Then you haven't been there long enough. Give it time. Robert, what should I do? Quit. Tonight. Don't go back. I need this job. I can't just quit. Then follow the rules. Don't look directly at them for too long. Don't turn your back on the larger exhibits. And whatever you do, don't stay past 6 a.m. Day staff arrives at 8. That 2-hour gap between shifts, that's when the building is completely empty. That's when they're most active. How do you know that? Because I stayed late once. Finishing paperwork. The day guard called in sick, so I thought I'd cover until the director arrived. Big mistake. What happened? Every exhibit on all 3 floors moved. All at once. I could hear them. Scraping. Shuffling. Clicking. I ran out of the building and never went back. We sat in silence for a moment. "David," Robert said quietly, "that museum has been standing for 101 years. It's had 19 security guards. Every single one quit or was fired. Most lasted less than 2 years. You're not going to be the one who figures out what's happening there. Just survive your shifts and find another job." He hung up. I sat in my apartment staring at the phone. 19 guards. All quit. Most within 2 years. I'd been there for 2 years. I was right at the average tenure. Was I next? I decided not to quit. Not yet. I needed to understand what was happening. I needed proof. I started bringing better equipment. A high-quality camera with night vision. A tripod. Motion sensors. I set up cameras in the exhibits that moved most frequently. The red fox. The barn owl. The Viking axe. I positioned them to record continuously during my shifts. March 25th, I reviewed the first night of footage. The recording showed exactly what I expected. Nothing. The exhibits remained perfectly still on camera. No movement. No changes. But when I did my physical rounds that night, the exhibits had moved. The photos proved it. The cameras showed no movement. But the exhibits were in different positions before and after. It was like they knew they were being recorded. Like they only moved in the gaps. The moments when no one, no device, no person was watching. I tried different camera angles. Hidden cameras. Motion-activated cameras. Same result. The cameras never caught movement. But the exhibits still moved. Whatever was happening here didn't follow normal physical rules. It existed in the gaps of observation. The spaces between attention. April 2024. 1 month into my investigation. The movements were getting more dramatic. The red fox now moved across its entire display platform. Not just rotating. Traveling. I'd find it on the opposite side from where it started. The barn owl rotated its head 180 degrees. Owls can do that in life, but taxidermy owls shouldn't be able to. The raccoon climbed. I found it on top of its artificial log instead of beside it. And the grizzly bear, the one Robert warned me about, started moving. April 15th, Tuesday night. 3 a.m. round. Second floor. The grizzly bear is the largest taxidermy piece in the museum. 7 feet tall, mounted in an aggressive pose. Paws raised, mouth open showing teeth. Positioned in the center of the North American Mammals Hall. I've always found it unsettling. The aggression in its pose. The way its glass eyes seemed to follow you. But it had never moved. In 2 years, it stayed exactly where it was. Until April 15th. I was walking through the Mammals Hall when I noticed the bear's shadow was wrong. The emergency exit sign casts a specific shadow from the bear. I've seen that shadow 1,000 times. Long stretching toward the east wall. But tonight, the shadow was shorter. And angled differently. I looked at the bear. It appeared normal. Same pose. Same position. I checked my reference photos from earlier in the shift. Compared the bear's position. It had moved forward. Not much. Maybe 6 inches. But definitely forward. Closer to the walkway. Closer to where I was standing. I felt ice in my stomach. I took a photo. Noted the time. Continued my route. At 4 a.m., I returned to the Mammals Hall. The bear had moved again. Another 6 inches forward. At 5 a.m., another 6 inches. By the end of my shift, the grizzly bear had moved nearly 2 feet from its original position. 2 feet closer to the main walkway. 2 feet closer to where guards walked during rounds. And it was still in its aggressive pose. Paws raised. Mouth open. Ready to attack. I started timing my rounds to avoid the grizzly bear. I checked the second floor Mammals Hall first, while the bear was still in its original position. Then I wouldn't return to that section until the end of my round. But the bear adapted. It started moving earlier. I'd check it at 11 p.m., still in position. Return at midnight, moved forward. I tried to sneak past without looking at it, but I could feel its presence, the weight of its glass stare. One night, I walked through the hall backward, keeping my eyes on the bear the entire time. If it only moved when I wasn't looking, then I wouldn't look away. I backed through the entire hall, watching the bear. It remained frozen, perfectly still. I reached the doorway to the stairwell, turned to leave, heard something behind me, turned back. The bear was 5 feet closer than it had been. I'd looked away for less than 2 seconds, just long enough to turn toward the door, and it had moved 5 feet. That's when I realized something terrifying. They were learning, adapting, getting faster. April 28th. I decided to confront Dr. Harmon, tell her everything, show her the evidence. I requested a meeting. She agreed to see me before my shift started. I arrived at the museum at 9 p.m. The building was empty. Day staff had left. I was early for my 10 p.m. start time. Dr. Harmon met me in her office on the 3rd floor. She's in her early 60s. Gray hair, sharp eyes. She's been the museum director for 15 years. David, you said you needed to discuss something urgent? She gestured for me to sit. I showed her my documentation. Photos, comparison images, timestamps showing exhibits in different positions. She looked through everything carefully. Her expression didn't change. When I finished explaining, she set down the photos and looked at me. David, how long have you been working here? 2 years. Almost exactly. She nodded. And before this, you worked retail? Yes. How are you sleeping? Getting enough rest? I understood where this was going. I'm not hallucinating. Look at the photos. The timestamps. This is documented. Photos can be manipulated. Timestamps can be altered. Why would I do that? Night shift work disrupts circadian rhythms, causes sleep deprivation, hallucinations, false memories. It's very common in solitary jobs like this. Dr. Harmon, I'm not. She raised a hand. I've been director of this museum for 15 years, David. In that time, I've had 9 night security guards. Every single one of them came to me, eventually, with similar concerns. Exhibits moving, objects out of place, sounds in the building. Because it's real, it's actually happening. Or because night shift security is a psychologically demanding job. Long hours alone in a dark building. The mind creates patterns, sees movement where there is none. Then explain the photos. Perception, memory errors, or, frankly, fabrication. I don't think you're lying intentionally. I think you're experiencing a psychological response to isolation and fatigue. She pulled out a form. I'm going to recommend you take a leave of absence. Paid. 2 weeks. Get some rest. See a doctor. If you're cleared to return, we'll discuss it then. I don't need a leave of absence. I need you to acknowledge that something is wrong in this building. Her expression hardened. David, I'm offering you paid leave as a courtesy. The alternative is termination for unfitness for duty. Which would you prefer? I took the leave. For 2 weeks, I stayed away from the museum. Tried to rest. Tried to convince myself that maybe Dr. Harmon was right. Maybe I was experiencing some kind of psychological break. But I couldn't shake what I'd seen, what I'd documented. The photos didn't lie. I did some digging into Dr. Harmon's background. She'd been director for 15 years. Before that, she was a curator at the museum for 8 years. Before that, she got her PhD in museum studies from a university in Massachusetts. I found an old article from her university newspaper, an interview from 2001 when she was a graduate student. The interviewer asked about her dissertation topic. Dr. Harmon's response: I'm studying the phenomenon of museum fatigue, the psychological effects of prolonged exposure to static displays, how the human mind perceives stillness and how that perception can be disrupted by expectations of movement. Museum fatigue, psychological effects, disrupted perception. She'd been studying this for over 20 years. She knew. She'd always known. And she'd become director of the one museum where the problem wasn't perception, it was reality. May 15th. I returned to work. My leave was over. I'd been cleared by a doctor who asked me some basic questions about sleep and stress. Dr. Harmon welcomed me back. Feeling better? Much better, I lied. Good. Remember, if you experience any unusual perceptions, document them and come to me immediately. Of course, I returned to my shift that night. Nothing had changed. The exhibits still moved. The red fox, the owl, the raccoon, the bear. But now I noticed something I hadn't before. Cameras. New security cameras. Ones that weren't there before my leave. I counted them. 18 cameras now. 6 more than before. Positioned throughout the museum. All angles covered. I checked the security office. New monitoring equipment. Higher resolution feeds. Motion detection alerts. Dr. Harmon hadn't believed me, but she'd upgraded the security system. She was watching, documenting, just like I had been. She knew something was happening. She just couldn't admit it. Or she was studying it, observing the phenomenon, using the museum and the night guards as subjects in her ongoing research. May 20th, Monday night. Everything changed. I was doing my 2 a.m. round. 3rd floor, Cultural Artifacts section. There's a display case containing Egyptian artifacts. Small items, scarabs, pottery fragments, amulets. As I walked past, I heard something. A sound I'd never heard in the museum before. Whispering, very faint, like voices far away. Multiple voices, overlapping, indistinct. I stopped, listened. The whispering continued. It was coming from the Egyptian display case. I approached slowly. The whispering grew slightly louder. Still unintelligible, but definitely voices. Human voices. I looked into the case. The artifacts were moving, vibrating, shifting, like they were agitated. The whispering intensified. I pulled out my phone, started recording. The artifacts stopped moving. The whispering stopped. I lowered my phone. The movement resumed. The whispering returned. It was reacting to observation, to documentation. It knew when it was being recorded. I stood there, frozen, trying to decide what to do. That's when I heard footsteps behind me. Heavy, deliberate, coming from the direction of the main stairs. I turned. The hallway was empty, but the footsteps continued, getting closer. I could hear them clearly. Footfalls on marble floor. Something large, walking toward me, but nothing was there. Invisible footsteps, getting closer. I backed away, toward the emergency stairwell at the far end of the hall. The footsteps followed, matching my pace, staying behind me. Out of sight, I reached the stairwell door. Pushed through, started descending. The footsteps followed me into the stairwell. Above me now, descending the stairs. Loud, echoing. I ran, down the stairs. 2nd floor, 1st floor, ground level, through the main hall, to the security office. I slammed the door, locked it, listened. The footsteps stopped outside the door. Silence. I checked the security monitors, rewound the footage from the 3rd floor hallway. The cameras showed me standing by the Egyptian display, then backing away, then running. No one else in the hallway. No footsteps. Nothing. But I'd heard them, clear as anything. Heavy footsteps following me through the museum. I sat in the security office for the rest of the night. Didn't do any more rounds. Just watched the monitors. On the screens, I could see the exhibits. Static, unmoving, but I knew better. They were moving, in the gaps between camera frames, in the spaces I wasn't looking. They were more than just moving now. They were active, aware, following. The next night, I brought a voice recorder. If I heard the whispering or footsteps again, I'd record it. 11 p.m. First round. Second floor. Taxidermy section. The grizzly bear was in its usual position. I walked past it quickly, not looking directly at it. Behind me, I heard a sound. Deep. Guttural. A growl. I stopped. Turned slowly. The grizzly bear was in the same position. Frozen. Inanimate. But I'd heard it growl. No question. I activated my voice recorder. Pointed it at the bear. I'm documenting this. May 21st, 11:17 p.m. I just heard a growling sound from the grizzly bear exhibit. I played back the recording. My voice was clear, but there was something else. In the background, under my words, a low-frequency rumble, like a growl, but distorted. Wrong. The bear hadn't made a normal growl. It had made something else. Something that sounded like a growl, but wasn't. I looked up at the bear. Its glass eyes stared back, mouth frozen in an aggressive display. I backed away, continued my round. Every exhibit I passed, I heard sounds. Faint, subtle, but there. The red fox, a high-pitched yip. The barn owl, wings flapping. Impossible. Its wings were fixed in place. The raccoon, scratching sounds. Claws on wood. All of it recorded on my device. All of it real. The museum wasn't just moving anymore. It was waking up. I should have quit that night. Should have walked out and never come back. But I didn't. I don't know why. Stubbornness. Curiosity. Some compulsion to understand. I kept working. Kept documenting. Kept watching the exhibits evolve. May gave way to June. The movements became more dramatic. More frequent. The red fox no longer stayed in its display. I found it on the floor once. Just sitting there. In the middle of the hallway. When I approached, it was back in its case. The owl flew. I didn't see it happen, but I found feathers on the floor beneath its display. Real feathers. Fresh. The owl's mounted wings couldn't produce feathers. But there they were. The grizzly bear moved across the entire second floor. I'd find it in different locations every night. Always closer to the stairs. Always closer to the exit. On June 8th, I found scratch marks on the walls. Fresh gouges in the plaster. Like something with claws had dragged itself along the corridor. On June 12th, I found a trail of wet footprints. Small, paw-shaped, leading from the taxidermy section to the stairs. They evaporated as I followed them, fading into nothing. On June 15th, I heard voices. Clear, distinct, coming from the first floor paleontology section. I descended the stairs. The voices stopped, but I could hear breathing. Multiple sources, all around me. The dinosaur skeletons. They were breathing, in and out, dry, rattling. Impossible. I ran back to the security office, locked myself in, didn't emerge until my shift ended. June 18th, I filed a formal complaint with the museum board, detailed everything, movements, sounds, evidence. They scheduled a meeting. Me, Dr. Harmon, and 2 board members. I presented my documentation, photos, audio recordings, detailed logs. Dr. Harmon listened calmly. When I finished, she spoke. David has been under considerable stress. Night shift work is demanding. I've recommended psychiatric evaluation, but he's refused. I haven't refused. I don't need evaluation. I need you to acknowledge that this museum has a serious problem. One of the board members, an older man named Douglas Reed, spoke up. Mr. Chen, these recordings could be explained by building acoustics. Old structures make sounds, especially at night. And the movements? The photos showing exhibits in different positions. Perception errors. Or, frankly, manipulation. We can't verify these weren't staged. The second board member, a woman named Cara Thompson, added, "We've reviewed the security footage. Nothing unusual appears on any camera. The exhibits remain stationary throughout your shifts, because they move when the cameras aren't capturing them. When observation gaps exist." Dr. Harmon shook her head sadly. "David, please listen to yourself. You're suggesting inanimate objects are moving based on whether they're being observed. That's not how reality works." Then explain the previous 19 security guards. Why they all quit. Why the average tenure is less than 2 years. Turnover in security positions is common. It's demanding work. Douglas Reed leaned forward. "Mr. Chen, we're prepared to offer you a generous severance package. 3 months' pay. Positive reference. In exchange, you resign effective immediately and sign a non-disclosure agreement about these claims. You're buying my silence. We're protecting the museum's reputation and offering you financial support during a difficult time." I looked at their faces. They weren't going to help. They knew something was wrong. The upgraded security system proved that. But they'd never admit it publicly. The museum's reputation, tourist revenue, school field trips, all of it depended on maintaining the illusion of a safe, normal, educational institution. They couldn't acknowledge that their exhibits were alive. I took the severance, signed the NDA, left that day. I've been gone from the Riverside Natural History Museum for 3 months now. I got a new job. Day shift security at an office building. Boring. Safe. Normal. But I can't stop thinking about the museum. About what I left behind. I drive past it sometimes. The building looks the same. Normal. Innocent. I checked their website. They hired a new night security guard. His name is Michael Torres. He's 31 years old. No prior museum experience. He's been there for 6 weeks. I want to warn him. Tell him what's waiting. What he'll start noticing in another year. But I signed an NDA. And even if I didn't, would he believe me? Last week, I drove past the museum at 3 a.m. I don't know why. Compulsion. Unfinished business. I parked across the street. Looked up at the dark windows. And I saw movement. Inside the building. On the second floor. A large shape. Passing by the window. Too large to be a person. The grizzly bear. It was walking. Upright. Crossing the mammal's hall. I watched for 10 minutes. Saw other movements. Smaller shapes. Moving through the darkened museum. They're more active now. Older. Less concerned with hiding. Michael Torres is in there. Right now. Walking his rounds. Not knowing what's watching him. Not knowing that every night, the exhibits move a little closer to the exits. A little closer to freedom. I did some more research. Historical research. About Thomas Riverside, the railroad baron who built the museum. He traveled the world collecting specimens, hunting, acquiring artifacts. But in 1946, a year before he died, he wrote a letter to a colleague. The letter is archived at the Portland Historical Society. In it, he wrote, "My collection has become restless. I hear them at night, in the halls of my home. Walking, searching. I have built them a proper house, a museum, where they might find peace. But I fear they desire not peace, but escape. I have bound them to the building as best I can, but I worry what might happen should those bindings weaken." He knew. The founder knew. His collection wasn't just dead specimens. They were something else. Something aware. Something trapped. And he built the museum to contain them. To keep them from escaping into the world. But bindings weaken over time. 101 years is a long time. The exhibits are getting stronger. more active, learning, and eventually, they're going to leave. It opened its mouth, and in a voice that sounded like wind through dead trees, it said, "Thank you for noticing us, for seeing us. We've been waiting so long to be seen." Then it left, walking into the darkness, disappearing. I woke up in a cold sweat. I'm writing this because someone needs to know. Someone needs to have the truth before it's too late. The Riverside Natural History Museum is not a safe place. The exhibits are not inanimate. They're aware. They're learning. They're getting stronger. Thomas Riverside bound them to that building a century ago. But those bindings are breaking down. Every night guard who works there sees it happen. The movements, the sounds, the impossible evidence. And every night guard either quits, disappears, or convinces themselves they imagined it. Dr. Harmon knows. The board knows. They've known for decades. Maybe since the beginning. But they can't admit it. Because if they admit the exhibits are alive, they'd have to close the museum. Answer questions they can't answer. Explain the unexplainable. So they hire new guards. Watch them discover the truth. Then discredit them. Pay them off. Make them sign NDAs. 20 guards in 101 years. An average tenure of less than 2 years. I was number 19. Michael Torres was number 20. Number 21 starts next week. I saw the job listing. They hired someone named Jennifer Park, 29 years old. Night security experience at a mall. She has no idea what she's walking into. I want to warn her, but I can't. The NDA, the legal consequences. All I can do is write this. Post it anonymously. Hope someone sees it. Someone who can do something. If you live in Portland, Oregon, don't visit the Riverside Natural History Museum. If you work there, quit. Now, before you've been there long enough to understand. If you're thinking of applying for the night security position, don't. And if you're Jennifer Park, reading this somehow, run. Because they're not just moving anymore. They're preparing, organizing, working together. And when they finally break free of whatever is holding them in that building, when the last binding breaks and they walk out into the world, I don't know what will happen, but I know it won't be good. The exhibits at the Riverside Natural History Museum want to leave, and I think they're almost ready. The Vantum Files. Case number 006. The Riverside Museum. Status: ongoing. Location: Riverside Natural History Museum, Portland, Oregon. Phenomenon: Animate exhibits, progressive movement, temporal observation anomalies. Night guards employed, 20, average tenure, 1.8 years. Current status: museum remains open, new guard hired. Warning issued: do not work night security at this location. If you are Jennifer Park or any future night guard, document everything. Trust your observations. Quit before 2 years. Some museums preserve history. Some museums imprison something else. The exhibits are watching. They're waiting. And they're learning how to leave.